This program is a simulated exercise.
We do have this report about Russian servers. If it should turn out to be the case that we can identify the attacker, what are our options for responding and, if necessary, retaliating?
We need to have the options lined up for the president. I think the president has to be very clear that, number one, our national security is still intact generally, if we find out as a nation state, that we will take action against that nation state. Now, specifically what that is, I don't think you should say publicly, but we have ways to do that. And I think through our offensive cyber capability, we can probably have some fairly significant retaliatory actions.
Now, how would the world react to this? Supposing we satisfy ourselves using our intelligence, courtesy of DNI and CIA and NSA, that we know who's responsible for this, whether it be a nation state or a terrorist group. We're not obviously going to talk about how we got that. Are we going to have a problem if we retaliate, and has our retaliation got to be limited in some way?
Well, this is an unprecedented circumstance. In the past, if the information has been clear and the evidence has been good, and a nation has retaliated in self-defense, take the 9/11 attacks, for example, and we retaliated against the Taliban in Afghanistan, I think there was general acceptance of that action on our part. Is this an analogous situation? Would you necessarily retaliate like for like, kind for kind? Would you retaliate with cyber, or would you take some other step to penalize the offending nation? I don't know. I think we'd have to see all these circumstances and all the background before we actually reached a recommendation for the president.
With all due respect, I think we're in the wrong place. I mean, I look at this map, and it reminds me of 5 Category 5 hurricanes coming at the United States, and we're looking at how we're going to retaliate against the Gulf of Mexico. That is down the road. What it seems to me what we should be focused on, and what serves the president here, is what can we say? How can we manage and not add to wide-scale public panic?
But let me just take a little bit of issue with that, because here's the problem that I'm concerned about. This is one attack. If it in fact comes from a nation state or a sophisticated set of actors, what's going to happen if the attack tomorrow is different, or the one after that? So to the extent we can figure out who's responsible, the ability to incapacitate them, either by removing them from the scene or by deterrence, has got to be something we consider.
But I'm not arguing that we don't use every resource available to the U.S. government to find out who did this and stop them. But in this instance, we're talking about what we want to focus the public on. What are we going to tell? The last thing on our charge is what is the president going to say? And I think going down the road of, when and how we're going to retaliate, it doesn't seem central to what we have to get done.
I agree with Councilor Lockhart. I think retaliation is down the road, but what I would be very interested in is whether we can go to the Russians and tell them they have the option of either being part of the problem or part of the solution.
I think that's right.
If we think we've localized this to Irkutsk, which may turn out to be wrong, but that's the best intelligence, it would be extremely helpful if they could pick up these people, one, so that they aren't doing more of it, and two, if they're the guys who started this thing, they may be the people under questioning who are best able to figure out how do we contain this thing. So I'd like to, before retaliation, I'd like to start worrying a lot about getting Russian help.
To the Secretary's point, I think we, through diplomatic channels and intelligence channels, need to go to the Russians at this point and say, you need to find out what's going on in Irkutsk. You need to have possession of those servers. We need to know what's going on inside of them, and help us sort through our options here. There may be an opportunity here to, start some cooperation on these things internationally, which, by the way, we don't have much of at this point.
Do we have the ability, does our military have the ability, if we know where the server is, to shut it down? And if we have that ability, why aren't we using it?
We do have the ability to do that.
And that ought to be, it seems to me, central to if we have intelligence that says...
If we were to if we were to shut a server in Russia down, are the Russians going to view that as an attack? And so that raises the question for the group, and also a legal question as well. Do we have a declared policy in the cyber realm in the same way we had for decades in the realm of nuclear weapons? An attack issuing from a particular geographical area will be met by either a defensive measure, including shutting down the server, or if it's a deliberate attack, by retaliation. Do we have a policy like that? Secretary.
We do not have that policy.
Attorney
We're going to have to
General.
formulate it there.
Well, let me give you the two analogs here. Obviously, if you harbor an attacker, and we say you harbor an attacker, we're going to take you out. That's what we did in Afghanistan when Afghanistan was harboring the Taliban. We said we launched missile attacks. We invaded, for goodness sake. On the other hand, we say to the owners of communications infrastructure, let traffic pass. We're not going to hold you responsible for traffic that is passing through your country. Those are two very different choices. And if we choose to say we are going to take out your server, if we think what's coming across it is hurting us, imagine when the tables are turned. When somebody here in the United States, some hacktivist, uses servers here in the United States to do something that the Chinese don't like or the Russians don't like, will they be able to say, you said that's an act of war? We are going to reverse engineer this and shut down servers in the United States. This has profound policy implications for us and for our affirmative capabilities at DoD and elsewhere.
As you know,
Yeah.
all of these rules about how we responded to nuclear attack were worked out elaborately during the Cold War in negotiations, treaties, declaratory policy. I try and stay out of the policy debates, but as best I can determine, we don't have a declaratory policy that the international community understands. Am I correct on that?
I think that's right. We don't even have a policy yet, and maybe this will be the opportunity that,
If we survive.
will create it, which is to start talking with some of the other great powers on these issues. I would certainly say
we can get a
with
phone
Russia,
line.
with China, with Israel. And we've got to sit down with these people early and often to talk these issues through.
I have to add a piece of data here, which unfortunately will not make this any easier. We have, working with foreign intelligence services, the CIA has identified the perpetrator of March Madness. This person is in Sudan. As you know, Sudan is not a country with which we have an extradition treaty, so we start off with some limitations there. We cannot determine whether this individual is the originator of the attack. This is the person who is implementing the attack, but we can't with confidence say the inventor, but the perpetrator is in Sudan.
And one other piece of our legal attaché in Moscow says that the Russian authorities are denying any involvement of their servers, even as a hot point. So
All right,
more
so-
ambiguity.
So that raises two questions I guess I've got to present to the President. One is, what can we do with this person in the Sudan? Is there some way we can question them? Is there some way we can find out if they are in fact the originator of this, and what steps can we take practically? And then there's a legal question about what we legally can do. And then the second question, which I'm going to raise to Secretary of State, is if the Russians are denying the fact that their servers are involved, and we know that in fact they are involved, what does that tell us about what the Russians are thinking? So let me begin with the first question, the Sudan. John, what's our set of capabilities?
Well, we have relationships with a number of foreign services in that area. And the first thing we've got to do, what I have people working on now, is determining the physical location of this individual. We don't yet have precision on that. Once we get that, we can pressure the Sudanese through diplomatic and intelligence channels. Again, though, we're pushing on Jello to some extent. We can pressure them to go find this person once we have the location